Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Comic Quirks with Jimmy. I'm Jimmy, here with one of the biggest names in all of YouTube and all of comic book YouTube as well. Wes from Thinking Critical. How you doing?
Well, I appreciate the intro. I think I'm one of I feel like I'm flying under the radar, but I appreciate that. No, I'm doing great. Glad you sent out the invite. That's awesome.
What do you mean send out the invite? I just asked the person who's like literally has almost 10 times more subscribers than me. Oh wait, what is it? It's more than that. It's 1,000 times.
Yeah, you're an up and comer, man. We're both up and comers. We're going places.
Yeah. That's exactly what's going on. So we got Eric Breen in the chat. Awesome. Lord is here. How you doing, Lord? And I think that's it so far. Cool. So big things are coming out. And big things, I mean, we're here talking with you. That's pretty much what I wanted to do all this past week. Break into your mind about comics. And you seem like you have a firm grasp about the how the industry is going. So real quick, I like to do this with everyone. What's your origin with comics?
Well, so I was in the military. I'm a retired Air Force, and I don't know. So there's like an outstanding number about like lifelong comic readers like in the military. So the whole time I was in there, it was always kind of around me. And then I had a good friend of mine. He was actually in the Navy. He was always bringing in like the Red Sun, Dark Knight Returns. I'd go and I'd kind of thumb through them. And then when the movies like kind of started getting really big, I was a huge movie buff at the time. So I would get into these conversations with all these comic winners. I was like, man, I got to go back and read this stuff. I don't know what the hell were they talking about. So I started watching some channels on YouTube and, Comic Explain, stuff like that. And kind of get informed, and finally you take the leap, go get some comic books, and turned out it's the best storytelling medium in the world.
What was your first comic that you read?
My first comic was a Spider-Man because I was in the hospital because I almost ripped my arm off, and my mom's best friend from work brought me like 3 comics, I think 2 Spider-Mans and the Fantastic Four. No, it was Iron Man. Because I remember look at the Iron Man going like, man, his suit doesn't look very cool. So I read the Spider-Man comics, but I was from a little bitty town. We didn't have any comic books available, not even in the grocery store. Even though I am a little bit older, so
yeah, I'm in the same boat. My closest LCS is 2.5 hours away. So
hey, my closest LCS is like 4 islands away.
Oh my god!
In the Philippines, there's only one city that has local comic shops. I believe they have 7 of them, and it's Manila. And I'm not on that island. So I want to go to a comic shop. I have to do a whole family vacation and take the kids with me.
So, what makes a comic book worth buying, in your opinion?
Well, that's all. I guess it's all personal. I'm a writer-driven reader personally. It's not so much the character, and I love the art, and but a beautifully illustrated comic book with a bad story will turn me off. But a wonderfully written comic book with mediocre art, I can kind of dig that more. So I think it always kind of ends up being the reader. Some people they are a Batman fan. So if it's got Batman in the comic, that is the comic for them. And I'm more like, if Robert Venditti's writing it, if Ram V's writing it, if it's a Jeff Johns comic book, those are kind of what draw me in. Now, obviously, because I have the channel, I end up reading some stuff I'm not completely interested in. So I found some things that are really good that I didn't even know existed.
Like my boy Bendis, you kind of read that a lot, huh?
I'm documenting his issues on Superman for posterity's sake, and 20 years they're going to come back and be like, what happened to Superman? I'm like, it's all right there.
So you just spoke of like Ram V, and Ram V is doing a Future State Swamp Thing, which leads somehow into his ongoing Swamp Thing book after that. And I'm a huge Swamp Thing fan. What do you think about him taking over Swamp Thing?
So Swamp Thing to me is this, it's the second best comic book I've ever written is Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing Volume 1.
I'm sitting right next to that.
It's right there with Robert Venditti and Robert Venditti's Exo Man of War and Matt Kint's Ride. Those are like right there with the Saga of the Swamp Thing. So that is a wonderful character. It's one of my favorite stories. I know, Scott Snyder had a pretty well-known run. I think that was followed up by Charles Soule. But we haven't really had Swamp Thing unless you were reading like Justice League Dark. So I think it's pretty dope. And, Ram V is a really, really good horror kind of element storyteller. I think Swamp Thing really fits in his wheelhouse. Also, I think Mike Perkins is the artist. And, he's got a vibe that should fit in with that. So I'm actually really excited. When I looked at Future State, I'm not terribly interested in most of it. And a lot of it has to do with the creators. Like I said, I'm a writer-driven reader. But when I saw he was doing Swamp Thing, I was and with Mike Perkins on the art, that was immediately went to the top of the list. He's also doing the backup story in the Justice League on there with Justice League Dark. Hopefully, he's still writing Justice League Dark afterwards, but we'll see on that one.
I'm looking at some of the art from it, and I just clicked on it, and it took me to Bleeding Cool. So I hope my computer doesn't die.
You gotta go to the archives.
I was going to show you this. He's changing the character a little bit, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I mean, he looks like he's doing like a Donnie Take, like sort of metal thing on it. And right here, I don't want to click on it, otherwise it'll take me.
So he's got some horns. I know in the Future State book, he's like ruling the world. I imagine there's going to be a reason that the Green had to take over. So I imagine his Swamp Thing ongoing will be leading, I guess, up to that.
I'm not sure how I feel about him having like devil horns sort of things, because Swamp Thing's a guy who cares about the Green, and he doesn't really kill people if he has to, but he sort of just helps everything that he can, and the fact that he has that kind of like makes
there's a good chance that pollution is going to drive him to that.
We already had a Swamp Thing pollution book, and it's
hopefully that's not the case. I think Ram V is a much better writer than that. So I'm interested. When you have a writer like Ram V, he did these Savage Shores. He did what was that, Ruin of Thieves, the sequel to A Brigand's Tale. His Justice League Dark, basically that was outlined by Tynion, but he kind of was finishing it up. He's a high quality writer. I've got faith that he's going to do it well.
So. We talked about my boy Bendis a bit, but let's go into it. What went wrong?
I don't know. Bendis was really influential. He did a lot of things at Marvel where he was essentially the guy in comic books. Like, he was the number one writer. He was the trendsetter. And if you see what a lot of comic creators are doing today, it's oftentimes Bendis was the forefront, at the forefront of the godfather, the kind of the writing style today. But, everybody, has their peak. Everybody has a peak. And then, when he got in Civil War II, it was kind of obvious that maybe he didn't have it anymore. And while Riri Williams' Ironheart might have been a good idea, it doesn't feel like he quite, executed that one on the level of Miles Morales. He was trying to do something similar with the new character. It didn't quite work out. Mm-hmm. And when he went to DC, they just gave him way too many titles. Not only did he have Superman, he had Action Comics. He restarted the Wonder Comics line. He had Jinx World. Legion of Superheroes came not too long after that. He had Event Leviathan. It was like, you think about all the stuff he was writing, and I think he had a pretty serious medical condition or a medical happening that happened. I think he almost died. So he might not have been he's obviously not at his physical peak, and you can only stretch yourself so far. I read Frank Miller's Superman Year One. Hey, Frank Miller's one of the greatest writers of all time. It's not a good comic book,
Frank Miller, man. He sort of had the same trajectory where like everything just went up until it didn't. And
Frank Miller is interesting. When you think about him, like, has there ever been a comic book artist writer that was that level on both
John Byrne, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. John Byrne, Frank Miller, those are like the guys that are in the discussion. It's like, you think of, the King.
Oh, Jack Kirby.
Jack Kirby, obviously he's up there, but that's a really select group that could absolutely nail it on the art, nail it on the writing as well. And, obviously, eventually, the illustrations take so long. You have to go with the writing because it's more profitable probably in the end. But yeah, Frank Miller is amazing.
So Lords of Bendis is very limited in kinds of stories and characters he writes best.
Absolutely. He is best on like a street level hero sets. Like when he got Superman, it was like, why? That is so strange. Like it doesn't make sense. Should he be on a Batman or a Nightwing or somebody that's more,
I want him on Green Arrow, dude.
Green Arrow would make perfect sense. Not only does it fit in with the sensibilities, but he's got the power set. You know what I mean?
And also, he's going to have to bring on one of his writers one of his artists because he always does. And it works too. You can have Maleev or Oeming on that book and it'd work fine.
Yeah, Maleev, if you watch Event Leviathan, that was a perfectly fine illustrated comic book. I didn't like the story because it kept regurgitating what happened into that 80-page giant. But the art was pretty good until Superman showed up. And you're like, he doesn't look very super. Because he has that dark kind of gritty style. And Superman's not a gritty character.
And he had birthing hips. Yeah, man, and he gave him birthing hips, which I did not appreciate. I was like, Maleev is really messing up there. Although if
you read, there was an Action Comics cover that John Romita Jr. did not too long ago, where it looked like Superman was wearing a diaper. So
that's almost every issue on the interiors, dude.
The Action Comics is just when it started out, it was actually the better comic book out of between that and Superman, and then slowly Superman I think has just stayed steady, and Action actually dipped below it.
Yeah, man, because John Romita, as soon as he put John Romita on it, I was like, okay, cool, and then it came out and I saw the art and I was like, okay, Romita doesn't give a fuck about this book.
Similar issues of Superman year one.
Put him on Red Hood and the Outlaws. Oh God, no, keep him away from there. That book's already doing great.
We're going to get a new Red Hood and the Outlaws. I think basically all the creative teams at DC are done now, except for Tynan's Batman, Enrico Tamaki's Wonder Woman, and likely Bendis's Legion of Superheroes, I think.
So, okay. Oh, God. He kept one good writer, and the rest they were just like, who's the one? Yeah, keep him on there. Eventually, they'll get good. So that brings up Mariko Tamaki, and she just announced her new books, I Am Not Starfire, who, wait, what? Eric Breen just said, put my comment. Oh, there you go. Okay. Breen doing his thing. And so there's the daughter of Starfire is a goth, queer, another adjective.
Coming of age story.
I don't even see how. Because she seems like she's going to, it's a self-insert. And do you have a problem with that? What's your thoughts on this?
Well, here's my problem. And my problem actually isn't really so much with Mariko Tamaki. I mean, she was paid to do the job, and I'm sure she was given parameters which DC Comics wanted her to fulfill within the YA graphic novel market. The problem is with DC, you need synergy among your characters. Where has Starfire ever been old enough to have a teenager? And if she did have a teenager, wouldn't the father be like Dick Grayson? Why does it look like the Penguin's the father? There's a lot of continuity issues, and who's the comic book for? If it's for the YA market, isn't that supposed to be an entryway into growing these readers to where they move over to your adult comics? When I say adult, I don't mean X-rated. I mean the comic line that you're putting out that adults are reading. If you go in and read that Starfire story that's really about the goth daughter Mandy, where do you go from there? What's the DC series that you go for? That's not a jumping on point. That's a dead end. Like, what's the point? I think that's all goes on DC Comics and their leadership. Obviously, this thing would have been contracted out and paid out and probably been in the works for 2 or 3 years. But you can just see why their YA graphic novels aren't always.
Well, apparently, there's going to be more like this book because she has her own imprint now that promotes books like this towards the LGBT community. Or
she's been doing that for years. That's how she got started in comics. Was LGBTQ representation graphic novels. She's well known in that.
I don't think that's a way to like treat. If you're trying to make an audience broad, just labeling it to a small, minute audience of goth LGBT people.
Here's the problem. That market exists, and it's already being serviced by other companies. When somebody goes in and they want their goth teen LGBTQ inclusive graphic novel coming of age story, do you think they're going to look for something with a DC Comics logo on it? No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit in with the brand. It's just it's a bunch of people that were like, well, we got to get in the YA graphic novel section. Look, it's a growing audience, and that's true. But you got to find your niche. Your niche is action storytelling with the best superhero characters in the world. Don't sell yourself short. And so it's just, I think there was an identity crisis, shocking, with DC Comics. Now we do see, Michelle Wells, who was the publisher after Bob Harris left, she was removed, and this would have been something that she would have, been producing from inception to getting out there. So, and I think there's probably a reason for that, because all these types of books, and there's nothing wrong with those types of books. There are people that like those comic books, but they don't fit in with the DC brand, and they certainly aren't going to get people going and reading other DC products, or going to the video game, or going to HBO Max and watching the Titan series. If you only knew Starfire from that Titan series, and you're like, oh, my daughter likes that character, let me get this book, you'd be horrified. You're like, what is this? This isn't the same character. So I think they're cleaning that up.
That brings up a good subject too, which is why is it hard to market for the YA audience, and why are they failing at that so much?
Well, I mean, the audience already exists. It's already being serviced. There's already, Rainbow Rowell. She's writing Runaways for Marvel's periodic comic book. Makes no sense in the world. If Marvel wanted to hire Rainbow Rowell, she should be writing like a Runaways series, YA graphic novels. Like, that would make sense. That property, converts over that audience and stuff like that. So they're kind of doing it backwards, whereas DC is trying to shoehorn characters that don't fit into that audience over there. Whereas they're like their Raven book, that character makes sense. A young girl that's not completely accepted by society, has magical powers, stuff like that. You don't need your self-insert character. A lot of girls can identify with that. And so that character kind of transitions over well. Beast Boy transitions over pretty well for boys and girls, maybe Nightwing, stuff like that. But they're like just trying to create stuff out of thin air. There are characters in the DC Comics universe that are LGBTQ friendly. That you probably don't even need to make characters.
And I think I was a kid not too long ago. And if I would have saw like this stuff coming out, like was it the Harley Quinn Breaking Glass or this new one coming out, I would not read comics because it just would not appeal to me, and I probably wouldn't appeal to most girls at that age either. And what I think they need to do is get in with Scholastic and just put out some of like the best books they're putting out right now, like Donny Cates' Venom or his Thor, or you could even do like Jason's Avengers, or like go back a little bit and put out some titles they may know, like Civil War, because like kids would think that's awesome, and you're gonna get most of the guys to read it. I'm not sure about the girls. I mean, if you want to do the girls, you're gonna have to put out some good books.
Well, I mean, Scholastic is like Coke or Band-Aid. It's a brand that is transcended like the competition. When people think about that genre of books, they call it Scholastic. They don't call it, YA graphic novels. They say go to the Scholastic section, and there's going to be other publishers in there. So they kind of own the market. So it's kind of foolhardy for DC or Marvel to think that they can just shoehorn themselves into the market without like working for it and understanding it. I think they think the power of their characters are enough to penetrate the market and get some market share. It's not really going to work that way because they own the market. So you need to bring people in that understand it. You think about Raina Telgemeier, she's with Smile, Guts, and all that kind of stuff. Those are like deeply personal stories for her. Those are stories that other girls are going to be able to relate to because they're kind of based in fact on things that she's went through. Now, maybe Mandy, Starfire's goth teen daughter, is something personal to Mariko Tamaki, but it says Starfire on the label. That's the character people recognize, and that's why I say it just doesn't work. Obviously, they need to make headway into that market because that's the market that's growing. That and manga, right? Those are the two markets that are growing. Periodic comics are kind of shrinking right now. But there is a way. You have all these great stories. Go out and find a good quality YA writer and go and take the Judas Contract. Have it,
I see. You want to like take huge stories and turn it into like a YA format.
Yeah, just have somebody give them the YA treatment, release it over there, and when they become 18, they come over and read the real Judas Contract. That's a good segue between the markets, and there are a lot of classic stories that you could do that with. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Like also like Days of Future Past, anything X-Men right now, I think kids would eat up because like Wolverine's like the biggest thing.
Oh yeah, you got the movies out. You could, Spider-Man obviously transitions perfectly. Young Spider-Man when he was still in high school. There's a lot of characters. Miles Morales, absolutely. Even Kamala Khan. I know people are down on that character, and it doesn't appear that the video game audience is receptive to that character as well. But when she first came out, she was selling well and was actually received pretty well, but it kind of went off the rails. You could do things with those characters. Actually, Marvel probably is even in a better position, although DC has so many good legacy characters. You can definitely do some stuff there too. Super Sons? Absolutely.
Now, did I already ask you, are comics dead?
You haven't asked me that question, but we seem to hear it a lot. No, I don't think comics are dead, but they're certainly evolving. Like with the information that we're receiving right now from DC Comics and their new creative teams and their new lineup following Future State. Do I think a lot of DC Comics are going to be written with the comic reader in mind? Like, I want to tell the best comic story for people that have been reading comics all their lives. No. I think comic books are, as Perch would say, they're a marketing vehicle. It's a place to test out stories and see if you can get some traction on a character. Obviously, Joelle Jones, Wonder Woman, which is going to be Yara Flor, the new Wonder Woman in Future State, that comic has not even dropped yet. They've already got the follow-on sequel, Wonder Girl, by Joelle Jones, and they have the show in production,
CW.
Wonder Girl for the CW. Naomi, a Bendis creation, probably the best thing that he's done at DC Comics.
Yep.
As far as quality, the art was amazing. I don't know why they ended that run to put her in Young Justice, but that's a Bendis. You have to talk to him about that. Now we just found out Eva DuVernay is producing a CW show. She's giving a treatment for a CW show for Naomi to go up there as well. So
yeah, that was yesterday.
You are seeing the tail is wagging the dog. That the comic books are going to be a reflection of future plans for television.
Yeah, and I just think that loses a touch for the comic.
I think it sucks. You got to read indies.
And also, like, it seems like the readers, like, it seemed like from last year to this year, I think it was down like 3%, something like that. And it seems bad. It seems like it just keeps going down and down after year. I mean, from the 90s where we were selling hundreds of thousands of books to that was.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of high periods after the 90s. Nothing's ever going to quite get there because you had so many artificial like enhancements going into the market where people were speculating on things that were never going to be valuable. Everyone decided to open up a comic book shop because there was so much demand and there wasn't enough supply. It turned out once people got wise to the fact that what makes a comic book truly valuable really is rarity. And they were, basically creating false rarity by, this is going to be a what in whatever foil cover variant. And obviously they've taken it to new levels. They had, the 1 in 1,000 Jim Lee X-Men yellow variant that was $1,000 on day one. Basically creating scarcity in the market with new product.
Now, my favorite time in comics is I call it the Marvel Knights Bendis era, when Marvel from 99 to about 2011, 12, pushing it. Their whole lineup of comics meant something to the main overall arc of the company. Everything was planned out perfectly. You got people on the right books. You have people who's writing the right events. You got everything was perfectly planned out, and then it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a chance that we could possibly get back there?
Well, yeah. If you read Valiant comics from 2014 to 2017, 2018, whatever it is that Dinesh left the company, when he recreated Valiant comics, and then when he left the company, they did like 5 to 7 comic books a month. Exo Manowar, Bloodshot, Ninja K. And then they would have events, and they would have little miniseries with Faith and stuff. I think Harbinger was an ongoing and stuff. And that was a very well-crafted, well-contained comic book universe because it was smaller in scale. You think about what Marvel's doing. They were putting out, before the pandemic, they were putting out like 105 new comics in a month. Like, how can you keep all that straight? It's more than anyone could ever think about. You would have to have a very robust editorial, and continuity services department.
Exactly.
Their heads on it. So these things kind of got bigger. But if you think about, Sean Gordon Murphy, I guess he announced on Purchase thing where he has like a new 3-year contract for his Murphyverse.
Hey,
that should be a very well crafted, maintained universe where everything makes sense. It has to go through one creator, and he can kind of keep his, keep everything in line. Kind of what we thought we would be getting with Dawn of X with Jonathan Hickman. It doesn't feel like maybe that's been the case, but I think these little pocket universes will probably is the way that it'll work correctly. Or maybe like what everybody wishes they brought back, the Ultimate Universe, a little smaller scaled down line with the same characters, but not nearly as big and robust.
The Ultimate Universe was so much fun. I don't care what people say about it. That universe was so much fun. I didn't even read Ultimate Spider-Man. I'm not a Spider-Man fan, but everything else I've read of it was just so much fun.
I remember reading the Ultimates. Obviously that's where they get like the Captain America origin for the movie. It kind of comes from Ultimates. You get the really cool costume when Captain America finally has a dope costume in the movies. That comes from Ultimates, but. That's a crazy story. It's a lot of fun. It's really good, but man, some of the stuff Mark Millar was doing with Wasp and Hank Pym, gross. It's like laying eggs in his bed. He's all like spraying her.
Also, we got the Mjolnir, Stormbreaker from the movies, which was just Mjolnir of the 1610 universe. So. And that was awesome. And Hickman did a story on the Avengers, which I think should be made into a movie. It was so sci-fi. Hickman has one of the best brains for sci-fi. Like if you read East of West, just Hawks and Pox.
He's a big idea guy. He executes it. Maybe not the manner that I personally like. I like things to be bang, bang, bang. They're a little bit more spread out, but his stuff is really fulfilling because you can tell he's like mapped everything out for the most part. That's why Ten of Swords felt so weird. this is Jonathan Hickman. It doesn't feel like Jonathan Hickman. I read Infinity. That thing was like 650 pages of well-crafted story.
Oh man, you know it's funny because Secret Wars was so big, people overshadows Infinity, and Infinity was really fun. And it's
Secret Wars is interesting. I thought it felt like he was setting up all this stuff that was going to happen in the end, and he kind of like decided not to do it. Felt like the end. That kind of happens in comic books a lot.
I don't know, man, because he was really setting up Doom this whole time, and what he did to Thanos really, I appreciated first of all, but it felt like a perfect end to me. Like I didn't feel like it was like anything missing.
That's like one of my main complaints about. I love comic books. Like I said, it's the best storytelling medium. Like when I was in the military, you know, I have to write performance reports. My one boss, she's always like, Wes, this needs to be a crescendo. You don't want to begin on the high note. You got to end on the high note. So you might have to take creative license on how you write this. But the last thing should be the most important part. When the supervisor, whoever's scoring this, you know, for promotion, is reading this, when they're at the end, they should be in awe of who you're writing this for. And I feel like comic books, they like crescendo, and then there's 2 extra issues as they do an epilogue. Like you probably should have just ended it on the cool note.
That's why I appreciated Tomasi's and Gleason's Superman run, because it was just, we're going to tell the story, and however long it takes, it's how long it takes. You had issues, like 2-issue story arcs, 3 issues, 4 issues. They really took their time, and it was fun. And that leads into, why can't we get a good representation of Superman live action?
Well, I mean, I think Superman 2 is pretty darn good. I don't like the original Superman movie. People are going to slay me for that one.
What?
Superman 2, I think, was a lot of fun. I think the Dean Cain Superman show was actually pretty good. And Smallville, for like the first 3 or 4 years, was pretty darn good. But I'm not a fan of.
Maybe I should rephrase what I was saying for the movies. And besides Christopher Reeve, because there's been like 10 iterations since the 40s, and all of them have been except for Christopher Reeve.
Well, I think the reason you don't get a great take on the character, like they try to recreate Christopher Reeve in Superman Returns. I took my nephews to that movie, and they were mad at me for it because it was so boring. What is going on here? I was like, I thought it was Superman. It sounded like fun. So, but you go into you think about where Man of Steel came out, Batman versus Superman, Justice League. It's all coming out of the Dark Knight trilogy from Christopher Nolan. A very dark, gritty, Batman in the real world take. And I guess Warner Brothers thought that was the magic formula to make these movies pop. When you think like Tim Burton's Batman in 1989 popped just as big, maybe even bigger than those. And the sequel was a huge success. It kind of fell off, but those weren't gritty and real. Those were even dumber than the comic books. If you look at the origins, like Catwoman, fell out of a building and she was saved by cats, and that's why she has 9 lives. Like it was silly.
Yeah.
So there's multiple ways, for turn a phrase, to skin a cat. And I think trying to ground Superman in reality and this like kind of hopelessness that was kind of ever present in Zack Snyder's universe, it doesn't work for the character. It doesn't work for the best elements of the character. Just thinking about Superman's father when he says, "So you think I should have, I shouldn't have saved him?" Well, maybe, son. Like that doesn't work for the character. And letting his father die in the tornado to save the dog. It's like, I don't know, man. Superman's as fast as the Flash. He could have ran over there and got him, and then. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of collateral damage there. So I just don't think Zack Snyder trying to ground Superman in reality does not work for the character. He should be the most hopeful character in the history of comics and movies.
He stands up for truth, justice, the American way, and it's sad because I don't think Superman could say that in a movie anymore.
Definitely not truth, justice, maybe. You
Yeah,
couldn't do the
not
American
the
way.
American way. It pisses me off because the man is the embodiment of hope. Like,
Well, they did the same thing with G.I. Joe. They were no longer real American heroes when they did those movies because they want to reach the worldwide audience. They don't want to
oh yeah,
make people think it's an American franchise. That's like, I don't know if that's so much, American culture. I think that's just like movie biz. We want to make the film or the property as accessible as everyone, specifically to probably China. That's kind of like always the big audience it's kind of placated to right now.
we shouldn't be
So, really in what was it, Transformers?
yeah.
Next thing you know, they're in Beijing for no reason. And I think there are some movies that actually have extra scenes that are in China that aren't in the movie the rest of the world sees.
Oh, and Andrew Garfield too, because he missed like some big China event over there, and so they canceled the franchise because they found it like dishonorable to them, and so they're like, we're not playing your movie here anymore.
Hey, the GM for the Houston Rockets tweeted it as put out a tweet in support of Taiwan. They kicked the NBA out, refused to play their games on TV. They were NBA teams in China to play exhibition basketball. They're like, hit the bricks.
Jesus. People need to learn to take criticism, especially constructive. Okay. So,
but comics aren't dying, but they're certainly evolving. And I'm not the biggest fan of where they're going, but I do think indie comics are the future. There's that.
Oh yeah, man. And I'm a modern guy. I told you that, but it pisses me off. Okay, let me backtrack before I put my foot in my mouth. So I'm a modern guy. I had like 13 books on my pull list, and then I kept reading, and then it got to a point where after each book, I just found myself going, "This is it. That's all I got out of it." And so, I mean, I kept reading after that, but then I read some of Alan Moore. I read Alan Moore, Swamp Thing in particular, and it pissed me off to no point that it is better than anything that is out today. And so
that's one of the greatest comic books in the history of the industry.
I have no idea.
Plus, the stuff that like Stephen Bissett was doing is like never been equal. Just the way that he was doing his layouts and everything. Like, who was it that was recently trying to do something like that? I can't remember, but just Alan Moore's style. I think it might have been Tom King that was trying to emulate it, but it didn't work.
Oh yeah, you're talking about like his like the Watchmen style of like the 9-panel grids and stuff.
No, just the narration where you're kind of telling this. Oh, it was John Ridley's The Other History of the DC Universe. You could tell he was trying to write that and have it illustrated somewhat like what Alan Moore was doing as Swamp Thing, and it didn't work for me. I mean, I know some people enjoy that comic book, but it's hard to duplicate something like that.
Because Alan Moore is a novelist writing in comics, and you can't have a comic person writing a novel for comics. That just doesn't work out.
Well, John Ridley he's a screenwriter, but I'm sure he's written novels too. I'll be surprised if he hasn't.
Oh, John Ridley, the guy who did Gladiator?
John Ridley, you're thinking of Ridley Scott. John Ridley is the guy that did 12 Years a Slave.
Oh, yes. Okay, I know this book now. The one with Black
Lightning. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that was god awful. Oh yeah, but it pissed me off that this book, 3 issues of it was better than. I got more story out of it. I got a more feeling out of it than anything I read this year or last year. And so I called up my store and I told them get rid of all my books except for these 3. And they were like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No, I'm good. I'm just pissed off at comic books right now." And I feel like back issues right now are like the way to go too. Like indie is the way of the future, and so is back issues.
Absolutely. Everyone, there's 80 years of history that a vast majority of us, not all of us are Eric Bream where you've read everything. When you go to the back issues to be reminded of what you were doing when you were like 14. Most of us haven't read all that stuff. And there's like all these wonderful hidden treasures and maybe creators you didn't even know existed or are just waiting to be discovered. So, yeah. But If you're reading a comic book and when you're done, you don't think, hey, that was $4. That was worth the $4 in 20 minutes of my time. It's best to move on, because otherwise you're gonna like blackpill yourself on it. There's so many comic books out there. It is really hard. And take this, I read a ton of comic books because of the channel. It is so hard to weed out the the just average and below average comic books to where you can finally find the good stuff. It's almost overwhelming to try and keep up.
So we're gonna take questions from the chat if there's anyone in there who wants to ask a couple questions. But while I do that, I need to ask you, why did you start your channel in the first place?
Well, I retired from the military, and obviously I retired from the United States. My wife and my son were in the Philippines. So I was retiring here, and I got here, and I don't know if people know this, not a lot of Americans speaking English here. So I didn't have I was reading comic books, I was getting into it, and I needed something to do with my time. When I was in the military, I was like an intelligence analyst. It was just like, I don't want to say it's like creative, like writing, but your mind is always working, trying to put like these puzzles together, and you're briefing generals and stuff like that. It's it's a very fulfilling thing that you're doing. And then I just obviously I was having a great time with my wife and kid, having a lot of fun, getting used to the new place. But after a while, I was like, I need something creative to do with my time. I asked my wife, I was like, listen, do you think it'd be okay if I started up a comic book YouTube channel? And she asked me how much it was going to cost. We kind of went over all the stuff, and she's like, okay, you can do it. So then I sent out a couple of messages to people, and then Doug Ernst messaged me back to give me some of the ropes. And I don't know, I started my channel, and then I didn't upload a video for like 3 weeks, and then finally I did, and I was like, I enjoy this. This is fun. It's a lot of work. It's great, because so many people come in, they have great recommendations, or they have completely different takes on what I'm talking about, and then they're like, oh, I guess I missed that part. Or this is fun communicating on something that you really enjoy, and having to be able to be discovered.
Now, do you feel like you have a burden on yourself now to put out news about the comic book industry, whether it be good or bad? Because it seems like you're like your channel local news of just daily comics.
That's what I'm trying for. Now, sometimes everybody has their ups and downs. You're like, man, what am I doing here? But that's rarely ever for more than like a couple of days. Maybe you get some feedback from somebody, you're like, I don't feel so great about myself, or I put a lot of work into that video, and why didn't that one pop? That's the one I put in all the work in, and the one I was goofing off, with Breen is doing 6,000. You're trying to keep up with it and try to make heads or tails of how to actually do the YouTube thing. It can be frustrating, but for the most part, I really enjoy it. It gives me something to do, and then I do read some of the comics of my 5-year-old. Most of what are being put out right now aren't appropriate for kids, but when I can find something that is, like, I'm reading Strange Adventures with my son. We read what else we read? Kanto. We're reading the sequel to that one. It's not Strange Adventures. Strange Academy. Strange Adventures would be a terrible comic book to read with a 5-year-old. But so it's something we're enjoying together. So and plus, like, I really do like talking to people. So I like having Perch on the channel, Doc on the channel, Pele, Joe Corallo, Aaron Sparrow, Eric Breen. Having people on just talking about comics is fun.
I mean, sometimes, like, depending on Doc's mood, I feel bad for having him on the channel.
He's just salty. That's who he is.
Yeah, man.
He's just a different flavor of YouTube.
And he doesn't hold back, and that's what I appreciate, man. If he thinks something, he'll say it. So we got a question. What happened to the Shang-Chi army? Is that a question that out of your channel that I don't know?
I read the very first issue of Shang-Chi, and while it was fine, it wasn't something I was completely interested in, so I didn't keep reading it.
Okay. Considering how many regular guests you have around you, how do you make sure your opinions or personality shine? I need glasses right now, dude. Personality shine through. Sorry. Like, I literally past week. Like I need glasses.
Hey, I'm getting to the same place. You know, it's interesting. I feel like I'm always myself, but you'll see like a different side of me depending on who's on the channel. If it's Pele and I doing something, you might see the middle child in me that's kind of a natural smartass comes out, and we have a little goof at it. If I have Perch on, it's normally more straight news. I might bring up a controversial topic here or there. We'll talk about it very matter of factly, and then kind of move on. If I have Doc on there, maybe the same thing that would be very matter of factly, and then move on with Perch. We'll get into it. We'll roast a little bit. So, it all depends on who the guests are, and I want to be accommodating, and I want to make sure that they shine, ultimately more than I do. So, when you bring Breen in here on the channel, you're going to have a good, thoughtful conversation about comic books, and you're like, okay, this popped in my head. This is going to be. Breen is going to know this, and he's going to knock that out of the park. You just throw it up for him, then you learn about comic books for 20 minutes.
It's true.
Right?
Oh, I love Eric Breen so much.
Yeah, he's the best. He's like a rabbit's foot for my channel. Whenever he comes on and does a video, it's like blows away any expectations.
Yeah, he just knows more than I'll probably forget in a lifetime about any subject. And it's insane. I don't know how he does it. Probably the fact that he owns every book ever. So.
Yeah, he used to own 50,000 comic books at one time. That's a lot.
That is a lot. So thank you, Wes, for coming on the channel. What's next for you, man?
Actually, we got a lot of plans. Me and Perch have been doing some things behind the scenes. We are looking to grow. We're some new content based on news and things like that. But I don't know. It's just it's always important to keep your channel fresh and new. So like the format that I'm doing now, I didn't even mean to do that. I needed to talk about something, but I didn't have time to do. I was like, hey, Perch, can you just come in here and talk with me about it? And the response was so good. I was like, maybe I need to do more stuff like that. So I would like to do more of the investigative stuff that I was doing when the channel first started, because it kind of feeds right into like my intelligence background, looking at like big, huge swaths of information and coming up with pretty plausible scenarios or reasons why things are happening. So I wouldn't mind getting back to that, although that's very time consuming. Like if you ever read the Comics Alliance video that I did, that's like a 20-hour production, just as far as going in and doing all the research, scripting everything up, making all the pictures, and then recording and editing it all. So that's a long time to work on one like 25-minute video, like 40 hours. But I'll stand by it. I think it was really high quality content. But you got to find the happy medium to where you can get enough content out, but you're also doing things that keep you happy. So there's definitely going to be some changes, somewhat soon. I don't want to give them all away, but we are working on it in 2021 with Perch.
You're just gonna do what comic writers do when they're promoting a book they can't talk about. Big things are coming. Stay tuned.
I don't know if it's a big thing. It feels big to me. It'll probably be a letdown to some other people, but we're looking to change things and see if we can grow things.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Wes. I appreciate it. I appreciate your service, first of all. Thank you for serving our country. I appreciate that.
Well, that was my pleasure. I enjoyed all 20 years of it. And, I'm glad to be done with it and be here with my family.
Okay, real quick. How old are you?
I'm 42.
Holy crap, dude. Like, I thought you were young.
I told you I'm old. Well, I'm not old. Eric Breen.
You're not old.
I'm middle-aged.
Yeah. I thought you were like 32, 35. I thought you probably served 4 to 8 years.
Nah, I joined when I was 18. I did the little over 20. I almost made it 21 by the time my retirement papers dropped and I was done. So I've been retired for a little over 3 years now.
Well, thank you very much, man. Appreciate it. You can find him at Thinking Critical. If you're here, you already know that. So just go over there and subscribe again.
Hey, I appreciate the support, and definitely thanks for having me on the channel. We'll have to talk comics again. This is a lot of fun.
No problem, man. All right, let's see this. Goodbye, everyone.
Peace.